Great. Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. It's 10 o'clock, and for all of you out there that have joined us from the public, we're really happy to have you today as we all start entering into these last couple weeks of the 2024. So we have most all of the agencies represented. A few more may be joining our call today, and according to the statistics I was provided, we have about 144 people who had registered for our public forum today. Always crunching at the end of the week. You know, we never know for sure who's going to still have time to join, but we welcome everybody that's joining. We also have a really good representation of the registrants that we received across from appointed officials, elected officials, cities, counties, general public, interested people, planning commission members, a whole wide range of folks that are joining us here today. We did receive some of your questions that you sent in through registration, and we'll try to pick up on those as we do our closing round with the agencies when they share a little bit with you about what's going on in various agencies, and hopefully pick up on some of those questions that you sent to us in advance that we can respond to. So with that little bit of an introduction, I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first item is to just review the agenda with you all. We are going to have a couple reports on the subcabinet specific initiatives, which are our annual report and the awards that were, today's the last day, we'll report on that. And then two of the agencies are providing you with some updates, both Secretary Day with DHCD and myself with MDP. I think those are reversed actually in the actual presentation. And then we're basically going to utilize our closing round and with all of the agency secretaries and their designees that are here today for them to share with you verbally some of what's going on in their agency related to our sustainable growth work that we're doing for the state of Maryland. So with that, we're just going to get, oh, and I just want to remind everybody too that the meeting is being recorded, and that recording will be on our Sustainable Growth Subcabinet webpage that's linked in the PowerPoint, and the presentation today will also be on that webpage, which most of you, I'm sure, that if you're joining, you have found, because that's where you would have done your registration through. So just a reminder on that also. So first item up, get my screen working here properly, is just to introduce you and remind you all out there who's on our subcabinet. I'm just going to do a quick roll call so everybody can say hi and let you know who is here from each of the different agencies today, and then we'll do a bigger, deeper closing round at the end where everybody can share a little bit more. So we're going to start out with Housing and Community Development.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Jake Day here.
Okay, and Department of Agriculture.
Steve Conley, Deputy Secretary.
Steve, thanks for being here. The Budget and Management, who do we have? Anyone? Okay. Allison may be joining us a little bit later, I know. Commerce, Jim, are you here?
Yes, Jim Palmer representing Secretary Anderson.
Wonderful. Emergency Management.
Russ Strickland, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Department of Environment.
Hi, it's Serena McElwain. Nice to see you all.
Hello, Secretary. Thank you. General Services.
Steve Chaudhry, Secretary. I believe Assistant Secretary Wendy Scott Napier will be joining also.
Great. Thanks for being here. Health. Is anyone here from our health department? I think that they were not able to join us today, so I'll keep moving. Higher Education. Okay, I believe Jeff Newman will be joining us. He may jump in later. Labor, I see our secretary is here.
Hi there, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ashley Sharp.
Wonderful, thank you. Natural Resources.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you.
Okay, Secretary Kurtz, thanks for being here. Transportation. Okay, I think Jeff Anderson will be representing the Secretary, possibly joining a little bit later. Maryland Energy Administration.
Good morning, it's Jen Ayosa here.
Thanks for being here. And the DHCD Office of Neighborhood Revitalization. Anyone from that subgroup of DHCD? Well, we've got the top person with DHCD, so we're covered. From the Governor's Office, Deputy Chief of Staff, Shana Hernandez. Are you here with us, Shana? Okay, Tunji, are you here? They may be joining later also. And National Center for Smart Growth.
Good morning, everyone. Kate Howell.
Great, thank you, Dr. Howell. Okay, so to everyone out there in the public, these are always a little interesting because I can't really see all of you, but happy that you've joined us, and we'll have a record of who is here, and we're just gonna keep rolling. But hopefully you recognize that our Sustainable Growth Subcabinet has a strong representation of all of the agencies provided. And I see that I did not change out that title. So we are now the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet as per the legislation amendment that we did in 2024. Okay, so a couple of initiatives. The first one to know is that we are responsible for an annual report that goes out each year. And the primary indicator related to that is spending within the priority funding areas. So that annual report has been published and it is out there and available. And I'm going to actually call on Chuck Boyd from my team to identify. Chuck, where can they find the report at this point? Is it available to the public?
Yes, the report is available on the Maryland Department of Planning's website under the library section.
Of the library of MDP.
Correction, of the virtual library.
Okay, so if anyone's looking for the full report, you can find it there and let us know if you have any trouble finding that, or just put it, maybe someone can put that in the chat. But basically, this is what the breakdown is in terms of numbers and metrics. Of the 1.9 billion in state funds allocated in fiscal year 2024, 66% were within PFA areas, and comparatively to 65% in fiscal year 23. You can see the breakdown there. We do like to recognize that a portion of that, 32%, are non-place specific from MDOT and MDE. And you can see the breakdown there. If you want to know more about that, just dive into the report. Secretary Day.
Yeah, thank you. So I have two questions, and both generally relate to that 32% of non-place specific. The first question is, it's obvious to me that that watershed areas, highways, other linear infrastructure that MDOT might address are going to naturally include and expand beyond the boundaries of a particular PFA, or a particular portion of the priority funding area. So I guess what I'm wondering is, question one, does that non-place specific relate to geographically defined projects and programs that are just broader than or not small enough that they can be contained within a PFA? That's question one. Question two is, it's natural to me, again, that certain MDE and MDOT funding simply wouldn't be constrained to PFAs, again, because of the nature of the either piece of infrastructure or the geography that MDE programs are designed to address, and certain MDOT programs are designed to address. I'm wondering if we are able to, this is valuable to see. I'm just wondering if we are also able to drill one layer deeper at some point, maybe next year, and say that within those that could be constrained to a PFA, what percentage was? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Including the things that naturally couldn't, or the portion of those things. Like, let's say a highway project, resurfacing project or something, extends into and out of PFA. Even if we give ourselves credit for the portion that's within, priority funding areas, then say great, and the portion outside of, yes, it's good to know how much money we spent outside of. It might also be good to know, okay, we still needed to take care of that infrastructure that extended beyond, and that's not necessarily a policy decision that was made to deprioritize priority funding areas. And then, the same could be applied to certain MDE programs, I'm sure.
Yeah, great question. And I think definitely something one of the things we want to do is enhance our metrics and dive deeper on some of this data. But I'll turn to Chuck, who I know has the job of compiling a lot of this and working with the agencies. And Chuck, anything you want to respond or add to?
Well, just to clarify regarding the not place specific, particularly with MDOT, it's predominantly MDOT funding in that area. It's dealing with rolling stock, in other words, buses, and all of those capital investments of that nature that move and don't have a physical location per se, but they are significant capital dollars.
Okay, that's very helpful, Chuck.
Super helpful.
Great. Thanks for bringing that up because, obviously we want to concentrate our investments at the state in the most possible way. And I am going to be for the public and for the subcabinet. But that's something we really want to, I think, take a closer look at next year of how we can enhance the metrics and ways of really looking at the data and how spending is being made to continue to emphasize this whole focus of sustainable growth and everything. So thanks for raising that, Secretary Day. Any other questions on this one from our members, our subcabinet members? Okay, I'll keep looking for hands. And then for everyone, just as a reminder, that these are the priority funding areas, and you can go and find more specifics and zoom in on this through the QR code, but also basically through our website, be able to zoom into these areas and learn more about them. So that's traditionally been a lot of the subcabinets, primarily metric reporting. We are looking at, for the public, we are looking at new metrics in terms of how we can begin to really track and understand where investments are going throughout the state as it relates to growth. And you'll probably hear more from us next year on that one. The next thing as a subcabinet initiative that we've actually transitioned from what was the Maryland Department of Planning awards program. We've really tried to expand that and make it an entire subcabinet program. So we'll be looking forward to providing those awards sometime next spring, ideally with the governor involved, we hope. But today is the last day for nominations. They're due today. If anybody is just hearing this for the first time and you want to scramble, we are, open to discussing with you. So please put it in the chat. If there's something that, you just feel like you really just heard about it and we want to talk about it, let Chuck know and we can see what we can do for you. But these are the categories we've used this year, and it's been out there on the street since November 1. So hopefully the people on this call are aware of the fact that the nominations have been happening, and stay tuned on that. We'll be going through a jury process. The subcabinet will be receiving recommended awardees early next year, and then we'll be making those awards by, I believe, April, May is what we're looking at to make the awards next year. And here's a little bit more information about that and where you can find everything about the awards. So we're going to move into our first agency presentation, which is DHCD. Secretary Day, I'll just go ahead and move these along as you're ready. And we'll start with your first one. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Secretary. We can go back one slide. Awesome. 3 updates for the subcabinet today. One, I want to give you an update on the Just Communities Act mapping effort. So the Just Communities Act was passed and signed into law this past session. The Just Communities Act was a DHCD departmental bill that was passed without amendment. We're really proud of this piece of legislation. It is, I've talked about it before, but it is designed to give the governor the power to prioritize among any state funding program, to prioritize those communities that have been disproportionately affected by a racist policy, and whether that be redlining, whether that be urban highway construction, whether that be urban renewal efforts that robbed wealth from Black and brown neighborhoods. Those tacit government-supported efforts, or in some cases explicitly government programs, disproportionately affected neighborhoods, largely based on race. And what we are attempting to do is to rectify that by reprioritizing those areas for both funding, and then doing it in a way that does no new harm, which is complicated, as you can imagine. But the first part of that is identifying that geography. So we've actually brought on a few consultants. We brought on Urban American Cities, Dr. Tony Griffin, or Professor Tony Griffin of Harvard GSD, who is the leader of the Just Cities effort nationwide, leads the Just City Lab at Harvard. We build upon her work. And so we've hired her firm to assist us. We've also hired the Eastern Shore Regional GIS Cooperative, ESRGC, to support us in mapping. So right now we're in the process of developing the right data sets to inform that mapping. And by late this spring, early summer, we will have developed the map for adoption by the governor. We also ultimately have a scoring process that is in the works that will help guide the decision-making moving forward, taking into consideration not only those past acts, but also current conditions. It's not our intent to prioritize investment in places that are doing great. It's our intent to repair places where we've done explicit harm, and that is the objective of the Just Communities Act. So at whatever point is appropriate, Secretary Flora, I'll happily take questions on these topics. You just tell me when. Jumping to the next topic, I want to give you all.
Okay, and maybe to the whole group out there, we've been getting a few Q&As. Please, if folks want to put anything in the Q&A, go ahead, and we'll do our best to pick up on those as we go. So, go.
Sure.
Next,
Yep.
You want to go to the next one, and then we'll see what comes up.
Yeah. So we will absolutely get you info on the web link, which is at DHCD's website, turning the key page. So dhcd.maryland.gov, turning the key. Right on the homepage, you'll find lots of information about the Just Communities Act, including the newly published baseline report. And then I see Assistant Secretary Carol Gilbert is replying to the question about the Historic Property Revitalization Director, which is great. Jumping to the next slide, please. Oh, back one. There we go. Sustainable Communities Framework. For anybody who doesn't know, the Sustainable Communities Act of 2010 established another place-based designation that restricts and guides nearly all of DHCD's grant funding programs, and guides those dollars into sustainable community areas, which is a smaller geography than priority funding areas. So it's downtowns, community centers, historic shopping districts, main streets, areas in need of revitalization, things like that. They are designated by the municipalities and counties, and then come up through this subcabinet for approval. We are working to modify the Sustainable Communities Framework, and that modification is being that framework is being modified to address equity, resilience, and health, and those are the new elements that are being proposed to be added into the framework, in line with the broader sustainable growth subcabinet principles, realignment efforts, and pillars realignment efforts. And so we'll be bringing that to the subcabinet early in 2025, but just want to give you an update on that. Next slide. In October, the governor announced Reinvest Baltimore, a new partnership between the state, city of Baltimore, as well as philanthropy, the business community, and community leaders. And this is a new effort to address vacancy in Baltimore City. The effort creates two things. Number one, it redesigns Project Core, which is a now 8-year-old initiative to support the demolition of vacants, to reprioritize our efforts, focusing on demolition stabilization and acquisition, elevating our stabilization efforts as well, to try to save as many structures as possible. And it also expands that funding to $50 million. And it also makes it a mandated appropriation. So we'll have $50 million per year moving forward to address vacants from the state alone in Baltimore City, which over the 15-year planning time horizon represents $750 million. Plus, we're investing over $20 billion a year, neighborhoods initiative funds, and a variety of other funds that total over $1 billion per year, or over $1 billion in that 15 years. Pardon me. We need $1 billion a year. We'd like $1 billion a year, but it's $1 billion over 15. If you can, thank you. And then last, I want to share with you the second element of that is the Baltimore Vacancy Reinvestment Council, which includes a number of members of the cabinet, as well as, again, city officials, members of the General Assembly, Baltimore City Council, business and philanthropic communities, and community leaders, in a collaborative effort to address vacancy by addressing the geography, adopting shared geography, shared budget, shared values and goals, a vacant stat program that will guide our data monitoring and ultimately influence our objectives and the rate at which we accomplish our work. And then critically, we're going to spend a lot of our time in work groups on the constraints to scaling up and addressing those constraints. So happy to, oh, by the way, those are open to the public. We meet monthly. We just had our second meeting. The next meeting is January 7th. Happy to take any questions on any of these three topics.
Great. If anyone has questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A section. And we're going to be live responding and typing answers to those questions as they go along on anything that you're hearing today. Plus, we have all the questions that received during the registration that we'll also be trying to respond to in the closing round, just for anybody that's been joining a little bit later. So I'm going to give you an update on a couple of things happening at Maryland Department of Planning, and then we will go into our closing round. We'll try to hear from all of the secretaries around some things that they're working on. So we wanted to make everyone aware, and some of you may have been hearing from this already, if you were part of the MACO. MACO organized for us an outreach to planning directors. We did outreach earlier this year. But basically, one of the things we're doing at planning is to update the growth policy. And some of you that may have been involved with smart growth, sustainable growth, growth policy in the state of Maryland for many years may know that it actually originates all the way back to 1992 and came out of a lot of focus around conservation. And it's evolved from 92 with a couple of updates that have occurred since then, once in the year 2000, which added the APFs, the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. And then again in 2009, there was an expansion from what were 8 to now the existing on the books 12 visions that people hear about a lot, and they're used in different ways at different levels. We've learned through the roundtables that we did earlier this year. So for 2025, as an amendment to our land use policy by statute, we're actually looking to simplify it, make it much more crisp, much more focused, with more clarity, and something that we can actually build out metrics around also moving forward. And these 8 are the ones that we are including in the amendment to the legislation. First and foremost, as part of that, we need to recognize a lot of great success over the last 25 years in terms of smart growth and what that was originally intended to do, and Maryland's leadership in that nationally in terms of acres preserved, Smart Growth wasn't the only player. There are a lot of, sister agency players in this, but good job. It's a lot of what allowed us, I think, to move towards the 30 by 30 goals and meeting those actually ahead of schedule. We've prioritized state investments, as you just heard earlier, in terms of priority funding areas, and there's a whole dashboard around this that really has been tracking how we've been doing over the last 25 years. So good work, and we want to build on that work through these amendments that we're doing to the Smart Growth Policy to move it towards the Sustainable Growth Policy. Basically, just to make you aware, because this is coming up in the legislative session as an amendment, these are the code references, both in the land use code and the state finance and procurement codes is where you'll see reference to growth policy, and the amendments that are being made and anything that references those throughout. And those are the code references there. Once again, we'll be sharing this presentation as part of the Subcabinet webpage, where you would have went to register actually for today. So you'll be able to go to these links, find these codes, and learn more about where that smart or that policy is within state code. So what has been updated, what's being proposed as part of this amendment, essentially a couple of things. One, the original vision statements as they currently exist did not include equity or resiliency. There was a lot of duplication in the existing visions because the original focus was primarily around conservation. So we've tried to consolidate, clean it up, and add those things that were gaps, like equity and resilience, which is what we had added in terms of our amendment to the Subcabinet earlier this year, also trying to get alignment across everything with that. A name change from visions to principles in the field of planning. It would be more reasonable to be referring to a set of principles with a common vision rather than multiple visions. And so by simply just changing that nomenclature, being more clear about what do we mean by our growth policy in the state of Maryland, and once again, alignment. And then priority topic areas. The topic areas shouldn't be a surprise. It's just trying to sort of be much more specific and focused around each of those, and to consolidate what might have been previously 3 vision statements that all related in some way to conservation, for instance, to put that together under ecology, for example. And so these are the 8 principles, topics, priority areas that we're focused on as it relates to what do those mean for growth in the state of Maryland. What should we be focused on? And there are intent statements associated with each of these 8 areas. We're constantly doing presentation, updating groups as requested. We're doing a lot of briefings as we go into the legislative session for this amendment also. And happy if you have a group out there that would like to learn more specifics about the intent statements in each of these areas. But primarily think of it as essentially an update to the current 12 visions to 8 principal statements and intents. Next steps on this is that as Department of Planning, we are going to get back to what I'm told happened on a regular basis in the past. And we did relaunch this year, which was planning director roundtables, hosting those again in 2025. We are also in parallel with this legislative amendment to the code around growth policy. In parallel, we're developing an implementation guide, which is guidance. It's not regulatory, but it'll provide guidance to not only other state agencies and alignment across state agencies about how we use these, how we define them, how we integrate them, how we use existing indicators and that we can bring into these. So we have alignment around that. And that implementation guide will start development in January. We've already had a kickoff with some of our agencies that have assigned various staff people to technical advisory groups in the development of that. And then we are going to be starting up what placeholder name for the moment, a sustainable growth network, kind of a practitioners network of people that we can begin utilizing out there. You all, if you're interested, please let us know. Being part of that network, which we can convene a few times a year, get your feedback, get your thoughts, ideas as we begin to sort of make this evolution and shift from smart to sustainable growth. And what does that mean? Input into this implementation guide that we're developing, input into how does that connect over to comprehensive planning. So we want to be able to create that dialogue through that Sustainable Growth Network that we'll be formulating first part of next year. So those are some updates, very specific at the Maryland Department of Planning. Obviously, the subcabinet will be a very important part of this process and be reviewing this implementation guide in particular, so that it's something that's useful to all the agencies as we work together around, as our Governor Moore is saying, we have to grow the economy. So how can we grow the economy in a very sustainable way where we can still be, I think, absolutely keeping in mind quality of life issues, ecological issues, and things that we want to ensure all these things are in balance through the principles of sustainability. So that's our update from Maryland Department of Planning. I'm keeping an eye on the questions coming in, and I'm going to ask some of our staff out there, Chuck on my end, and Secretary Day, I know you've got staff on to try to be answering any of these questions we can that are coming in through the Q&A also. But let me go ahead, and this is actually the closing round. So this is the point at which, to the extent that we're all multitasking, looking at questions and answers, looking at the screen, trying to see who's out there, this is our opportunity for each of the agencies and either the secretary or their delegate today to respond to some of the questions that we received in advance through the registration, or any of the questions that you're seeing that are relevant to your agency that are coming up in the Q&A. And I am going to go through this list. I'm going to jump around a little bit because I know a couple of secretaries did let me know that they are going to have to jump off, and I want to start perhaps with Secretary Strickland. If you're still out there, maybe start with you, because I know you've got you're going to have to jump over, but I believe Mike is still with us if more comes up from MDEM. So Secretary Strickland, anything you want to share with the public about what you're up to, or any responses to any of these questions relevant to you today?
Okay, well, thank you. I've basically got 4 areas I want to hit, and I will hit them very, very quickly. First is an update on the Resilient Maryland strategy development. It's currently in development, and the next step is to develop the 5 sector chapters. And I want to mention that the sector chapters are environment and natural systems, food systems, housing, critical infrastructure, community, and local government capacity. So each sector work group will consist of representatives from state agencies that are considered subject matter experts in their respective sectors. And we intend to invite representatives from MEA to work on critical infrastructure group, as well as representatives from MDA, Department of Ag, to work on the food systems group. The other area is the Resilient Maryland Toolkit. You can now go to our website, and the toolkit is a one-stop shop for resilience-related technical assistance, funding opportunities, data tools, and programs. Versions of the toolkit were released in October of this year, so we would ask the public to take a look at that and provide us any feedback. Third on the list is the Maryland Office of Resilience newsletter. Again, you can go to our website. We're very proud of that. It's a monthly newsletter as to what's happening. It allows the Maryland Office of Resilience to communicate with Maryland resilience stakeholders. And finally, but it's a little bit of a list, is our disaster risk reduction efforts. We're involved with a variety of programs across the state, and looking forward to 2025. Major projects are our Maryland Mesonet system, which is continuing to be built out. That's a weather monitoring and data collection system that helps advance emergency preparedness, and particularly warning in areas. Annapolis City project. This is an infrastructure project that will address some of the concerns of major flooding in downtown Annapolis. Crisfield flood mitigation project, again, to help that area with some of their sea level rise and threats from flooding. Havre de Grace, we have a nature-based wetland project for stormwater filtration. Another one is the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership, and it's commonly referred to as the Middle Branch Resiliency Initiatives. And that's actually one piece of multiple resiliency projects that are going to take place in that Middle Branch area. And then finally, make Cambridge resilient. And that's a phased flood mitigation project. We're again looking at developing nature-based shoreline and stormwater risk reduction strategies to help that area. And that's very quickly what we've got to share with everybody, and wish everyone a very happy and safe new year.
Thank you, Secretary Strickland. That was a great list. I'm just going to keep repeating that we're recording Q&As in that section. If anyone has questions, we probably won't get to everything, but we also are going to make a copy of all of those, and to the extent that we can answer some of them in that web page, the recorded area of the web page, as a follow-up, we'll be trying to do that also. So trying to find different ways to ensure we're hearing and responding to the public out there. So thank you, Secretary. I'm just going to go in reverse order now, and we'll start with the National Center for Smart Growth. Director Howell, would you like to share anything that you all are up to, or any response to any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really exciting to be able to kick it off after Secretary Strickland. So a few things that we've been up to, just kind of in response. One of the things that was really exciting this year was through a grant with the Federal Transit Administration and MDOT, we were able to convene some community-led walking tours around Purple Line stations to help kind of connect community members and their concerns about walkability, which was something that came out in the comments around transit stations, as well as housing and concerns about change with state and local partners who are in government agencies. That's been really exciting. It's been a great way for community partners to voice their concerns, but also for the sort of agencies to actually respond more directly to community. So we'll do another one of those in the Tacoma-Langley area in the spring. We've also been upping our data work to support some other partners, particularly around affordable housing preservation, i.e. keeping things affordable, particularly our unsubsidized affordable housing stock in and around the 1 mile buffer zone around the Purple Line, just because that's in our backyard. It's a great place for us to start. So we're using some of MDP's data and projections, as well as local data, to really try to get a sense of what buildings are at risk of being lost from the affordable stock. So that's stuff that doesn't have a public subsidy, but that's affordable because of a host of reasons. And so really thinking about, how do we get ahead of some of the change and be more strategic about how we do affordable housing. And so we're working with enterprise community partners to convene some folks around that, which has been a pretty exciting piece. Our PALS program, Partnership for Action Learning and Sustainability, continues to work across the state, and we are really excited to be able to work with some state agencies, particularly on some larger issues, as well as our local, our neighbors across the state and counties and county agencies. So I think those are our big things, and those are really, the PALS projects have really been something that we've been able to respond to immediate community needs and community interest, with anything from water testing to planning projects around the area. So if your community is looking for something, please come talk to us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I know the governor's office has joined, but I don't think they're on the speaking link. Let us know if that has changed. But I know, Tunji, you're out there. So thanks for letting us know, and be watching the Q&As. So I'm going to go from there to Assistant Secretary Gilbert. Did you end up joining us? I believe you're out there. Yes. Well, you can, yeah, you and Secretary Day, however you want to coordinate your report out.
I'll just say very briefly that we're just very excited about the substantial resources for Reinvest Baltimore and other of our neighborhood revitalization programs. So it's going to be a great year working with our community-based partners with those resources.
Great, thank you. Well, let's go to Maryland Energy Administration. Jen Iosa, you're with us today. Any updates for the public?
The only updates that that I would offer is that the Maryland Energy Administration has a suite of financial and technical resources available for communities and individual buildings for both solar energy as well as energy efficiency. And for anyone who is interested in any of those grant programs, They can find more information at energy.maryland.gov.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for being here. Lots of great work going on. Let's go to transportation. I believe, Jeff Anderson, you've joined us from MDOT, representing the Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Flora. I really appreciate it. We've got a number of things I want to update people on. The first is around transit-oriented development. We have issued an RFQ for the Odenton TOD site, and that is one of the TOD designated sites by this subcabinet. Our proposals are due January 24th. We've also recently completed an MOU with the county and university around coordinating our efforts for development in the Bowie TOD area, another TOD designated site. We're expecting a good number of applications for new TOD designations in the new year. And towards the end of January, we expect to roll out a TOD fund. And that NOFO will, as I said, be coming out around the end of January. So a lot of work at MDOT right now to advance transit-oriented development. We are also continuing to move our execution of Complete Streets ahead. We're finalizing, even now, our Complete Streets policy implementation plan and hope to have that completed very shortly. And then we're going to have a launch event around that, probably towards the end of the month in January. We'll have details forthcoming on that for the public, but looking forward to that and really continuing to move that forward within the department. On carbon reduction program, we did a very successful first round of the carbon reduction program, got some great projects in. We are preparing to announce round 2 and put out a call for applications towards the end of January is when we expect the portal to be opening for that. But keep your eyes open for more information for the specifics of when that's going to go live. And then finally, another area that we've been working on a lot that we've talked to the subcabinet about before as well is project prioritization. For those who follow MDOT, you may be familiar with Chapter 30. This is basically the process that currently exists whereby MDOT receives proposals for projects that are new capacity for surface transportation. We look at them and how they rank in terms of achieving the MDOT goals and the state plan goals. We're updating that process with a new project prioritization process and have been moving that ahead with a lot of alacrity. We had an initial public rollout information session in early December. We have another one scheduled for January 8th for potential applicants, and then the portal for that will go live January 15th. This is a pilot year, so there are not funds associated with this pilot year. This is really a trial in order to basically have the opportunity for applicants to test out the system, understand whether they have the correct data and information to apply, for MDOT to basically use those applications to do an initial round of scoring, see how all the criteria are working, work with applicants to see where the process may need improvement. But it basically prepares us, I think, really well for the eventuality that MDOT receives additional funding. So those are our updates. Thank you, Secretary Flora.
Wow, lot going on. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much. Okay, we're going to move on to Natural Resources. Secretary Kurtz, I think, has joined us.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Secretary Flora. I wanted to provide an update on the protected lands component that was discussed earlier and the way we're working to achieve the 40% goal. We are currently continuing to work through our program open space, several funding streams through program open space, whether that be easement, fee in lieu acquisition, to ensure that we're meeting that goal. One of the ways that we do that is that we evaluate a wide range of different criteria and different components that go into land acquisition, protection of habitat, resilience for communities, access, et cetera, and are continuing to try to drive for equitable acquisition that allows for not only greater access, but greater protection of natural resources that have associated benefits, building resilience, providing clean water, as well as providing healthy and safe areas for recreation. So this year, we've already had a significant number of acquisitions done. We are on track for having one of our a banner year, frankly, for land protection in the state of Maryland, which we're very proud of. So please keep your eyes out at BPW. We'll be continuing to move acquisitions through there over the course of this year as we strive to meet the 40% by 2040. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Great work. Okay, let's go to Secretary Wu with Labor.
Thank you, everyone. No particular updates in the planning world, although I will note, since our last meeting, we did have our National Apprenticeship Week, and one of our focuses in labor is going to be how can we make sure that we have the workforce available for all these projects, and in particular, how local communities can benefit from these opportunities. We can be bringing a wider set of communities and individuals to these jobs.
Great,
Happy
thanks,
New Year.
Secretary. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Secretary Wu. And obviously, these things are all connected. So, you know, labor and sustainable communities and places for people to live and how do they get there is all related to how we all make that workforce work. So thank you. Over to higher education. Jeff, are you with us? Jeff Newman? Don't see him. We can
He is on.
Okay. Jeff,
I don't know if he can
muted?
unmute himself.
Jeff, are you muted? Okay, we'll keep moving. We'll come back if we figure that out. Okay, I don't believe the Department of Health is on. If anyone knows otherwise, let me know. General Services, Secretary Chaudhry.
Thank you, Secretary Flora. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the team and everyone on the subcabinet for all their hard work and efforts throughout the year. I also want to congratulate Secretary Flora for really revitalizing this subcabinet and getting more engagement from the community from the entire executive branch to really support these efforts. So critical for the state, and very, very happy Secretary Flora was able to do this as well. Engaging everyone, and I know we're all here very much to support her on that. So congratulations and thank you for that. A lot going on in the Department of General Services. We've got a lot of efforts that we're working on behind the scenes. When it comes to sustainable growth, smart growth in particular, I know that we've been working very closely when it comes to any type of our real estate transactions, disposal of real estate, purchasing of real estate, the coordination with Maryland Department of Planning's clearinghouse process. Also with capital projects, starting to take a better look at capital projects as we start to review them, not just DGS capital projects, but other agency capital projects as well, to make sure we take into account, any type of, requirements or insight when it comes to where projects are located, why and how they engage with communities, et cetera. On the sustainability front, I think there's a lot that DGS is performing behind the scenes, and that includes collaboration with other agencies across the state for compliance with the Climate Solutions Now Act, and electrification of the vehicle fleet, installation of charging vehicles, we're also looking at coordinating by statute the purchasing of offshore wind, the procurement associated with that, and then the negotiations and purchasing of offshore wind power, as well as any offset of costs associated with that and the redistributing of any additional excess energy that may be over and above the state's needs. So working very closely on that regard as well. And we've got various other smaller initiatives, when it comes to performance contracting, other sustainable efforts that we're working across the state, really behind the scenes to make sure that we have more efficient operations. We utilize less utilities across the state, and we have more. We utilize more sustainable energy as we move forward. So and we burn less fossil fuel. So it ties in very closely with a lot of the goals of the more Miller administration and trying to become the greenest state in the country. So a lot happening behind the scenes, and wanted to again congratulate Secretary Flora on our efforts here, and looking forward to, as we close out calendar year 24, a lot more involvement, I think, as everyone works together in calendar year 25 to really expand and support this subcabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Chaudhry. Appreciate you. On to, oh no, Environment, Secretary McElwain.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Secretary Flora. It's good to be here. So before I get into, just talking about some of the things my agency has been doing in regards to sustainability, I just want to remind everyone that we're always committed to partnering with our local jurisdictions, because we just, we want to make sure that when we are implementing the policies that we have, that they're making sense for a land use, zoning, and from a resiliency perspective. And so from an environmental perspective, environmental protection perspective, when we think about sustainable growth, for me, it means incorporating green infrastructure and reducing our dependency on fossil fuels. We're working with planning and DHCD very closely, and Secretary Day, I know you and I will start working together even more. And we do this so that we can together envision a future that is, healthier and safer for all Marylanders. I want to highlight just a few things that we're doing. We have secured federal funding for electric vehicle charging infrastructure and purchasing electric school buses. And this is how we connect with our communities to this green transition that we have, because we want to make sure that no one is left behind. And this is also how we are supporting commuters. My agency is also working with the building community. Because of, again, based when you look at environmental protection and community protection, we want to make sure that the buildings are more energy efficient. And so that, the growth of those communities are aligning with the climate goals that we have. My agency also received a climate pollution reduction grant that's going to support more green infrastructure like tree planting. We want our growth areas to be compatible with the changing climate as well. And we all know that trees are so important because, they cool the ground and absorb rainwater. Rural communities are really important to me and to my agency as well. So we provide funding to those jurisdictions so that they can get the technical resources that they need to fortify themselves against, the harsh weather and sea level rise that we're already seeing in Maryland. So that's pretty much what we're doing. And thank you, Secretary Flora, for the opportunity to share that.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Secretary. Now we'll go to Commerce. Jim Palma, you're representing Secretary Anderson.
Yes, thank you. And he had some remarks that he wanted me to make this morning. As many of you are probably aware, yesterday, Governor Moore signed a sweeping executive order that was aimed at strengthening Maryland's business climate and making our economy more competitive. There are many provisions of this order touching many state agencies, and it's focused primarily on unifying and coordinating the state's economic development activities. There's several provisions that pertain to commerce directly and have grown out of conversations we've had with our partners and stakeholders over the past 18 months. Some of these actions are already underway. For example, the Governor's Office of Business Advancement has been established at Commerce. It's led by Louis Cardona, who joined the department last month. Louis will provide concierge, white glove services to businesses looking to relocate or expand in Maryland. He is there to help navigate the permitting process, help close deals, identify potential incentives, liaise with state agencies, and generally serve as a resource for these companies. There's some provisions we'll be getting up and running at Commerce over the next few months, including a government-loaned executive program. And that means we'll be inviting private sector executives to temporarily join Commerce to advise our team on best practices to more effectively execute our goals. Commerce will also be working more closely with local governments on marketing and branding campaigns related to economic development. We have a strong campaign at the state level, and this will make sure that we and all of our local partners are pointing in the same direction. This order also identifies target industries and sectors Maryland should be focusing on and directs an all-of-government approach to support them. These are the same areas that Commerce and the Maryland Economic Development Commission have identified during our strategic planning process, and these are life sciences, information technology, and aerospace and defense, with a special focus on computational biology, quantum computing, and search and navigation. Again, this is a broad order with many moving parts, so I'll be talking more about this and in greater detail in the coming months. But this will be a collaborative effort, and we at Commerce look forward to working with all of our partners in state government, all of our partners in the room with us now, and all of our partners in the General Assembly to implement the steps outlined in the executive order. This is a bold plan, but it's critically important to growing and strengthening Maryland's economy. And the executive order itself is available at the governor's website. I guess we can put the link in the chat if we need to.
Yeah, and there's other links in the chat for anybody out there to know that you can find all of the links we've been referencing are in the chat. If you could do that, Jim, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, it was a very exciting day yesterday with the signing of the executive order and the start of the hotel in Frederick. So thank you. Okay, next to budget and management, I don't think we had anyone join there. So I'm going to go straight to agriculture. Got about 5 minutes left. So Deputy Connolly,
Yeah.
agriculture.
Thank you, Secretary Flora. I just have a couple items. Our Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation has reached a pretty large milestone for, we believe. The state has invested right at $1 billion in purchase of development rights easements, permanently protecting around 376,000 acres of agricultural land. We think that's a really great milestone for our farming community. It's a very popular program. And the second item is part of the Governor's Bay legislative package. We're asking for authority to create a new program. Its acronym is LEAF. It's the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming. It's kind of modeled after the LEAD building program that will provide voluntary incentives to encourage the farming community to participate in conservation practices as well as community best practices, so that we can build stronger local rural communities with our farming community. And that's it for me.
Great, thanks. Thank you for being here. I know the secretary really wanted to be, so I appreciate you were able to join us. Thank you. Okay, Secretary Day.
Hey, thank you so much. And sorry if you called on me at any point and I was dropping off. Just had some internet issues here. I see a number of questions, and so I want to just take a second to try to address those quickly. There's a question about TOD and housing density as integral to sustainable growth. I think it's obvious that the Moore-Miller administration, both with the adoption of the Housing Expansion Authoring and adoption of the Housing Expansion Affordability Act, which concentrates resources in housing units around transit stops, supports TOD and housing density. In addition to that, a recent MOU signed between MDOT and DHCD further elevates TOD projects that the state is buying to the top of Maryland DHCD's funding programs. Moving down the list, there was a question about the pro-housing legislation and how that interacts with local development governance. Look, I don't know if anybody read the article in the Atlantic the other day about the housing crisis that our nation is in. Look, the number one culprit cited in that article for slow housing development over the last 15 years is regulatory barriers, regulatory hurdles. The preponderance of the authority to permit and thus to restrict housing development exists at the local level. That is all delegated down from the state level in Maryland. So we want to work with our local governance partners to ensure that we have a framework that actually supports Maryland families. And that requires a lot of work. Yes, the new pro-housing legislation is a piece of that, but we've got a long way to go. We're in a crisis, and what do you do when you're in a crisis? You get out. So we've got work to do in the immediate term to get out. Next question I saw was around combating gentrification and NIMBYism, two different facets of the fight in redeveloping communities. There's more to that question than I can see here. But yes, we want to combat both of those things. Our Just Communities effort, for example, is designed specifically to address keeping people where they are and trying to not displace. So that's a high priority while we grow. I see there's a question on ADU and middle housing, and also a question on residential growth, not overgrowth. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's really a misframing of the question around overgrowth. I think, look, we've got great planning efforts afoot, comprehensive plans that are adopted by each county and municipality that talks about how they want to grow, where they want to grow. If we built all of the things that they aspire to, which is the right fit for that community, we'd have ample housing. But our problem is regulatory process is stopping us from ever achieving that vision. ADUs are a piece of it. I know there's going to be some legislation this year around that. Middle housing is a piece of it. There's going to be some legislation around that this year as well. Last thing I see is solving homelessness. I'll just say to you, as the chair of the Interagency Council on Homelessness, this is a high priority for us, using every tool possible to support solving chronic homelessness in this state, as well as all of the vulnerable populations that are affected by the shortage of housing. And one of the ways we're doing that is by adopting regulations with the tools we already have. So we're using the QAP to support the development, that is the Qualified Allocation Plan of tax credits for that each affordable housing developer must respond to in order to be awarded tax credits. And we're using that tool right now to help elevate the number of units that we have in the state for permanent supportive housing and for addressing homelessness. So with that, I will take a breath.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close this out. I know we're at time, but just reminders to folks out there is that we've chosen to do virtual of these public forums in December of each year because we feel like we can reach anybody anywhere in the state doing this. We know it's not a perfect solution, but we appreciate anyone that has joined us. The recording, everything I mentioned before will be on the webpage. Keep in mind that at MACO, we're going to continue with our tradition of doing in-person at MACO, the Saturday of MACO. And for those of you that are there, plan to join us there. The other thing is that we are taking the questions that you submitted during registration and here today, and we definitely are looking at those, trying to make sure we're responding. If you didn't hear it today, we'll try to make sure we give you a response. And then finally, I just really want to say, I hope that you are seeing through this turnout of all these agencies that we are absolutely committed to working together, to being collaborative, because none of these things are insular or, we can't do this in a siloed approach. And so all of our work across this administration and these various agencies is to try to seek better alignment, try to find ways to simplify things and how we get them done, and to work collaboratively so we can get better outcomes. So I hope you're seeing that through this subcabinet. So thank you for being here. Thank you to all the members and my other secretaries for being here, and happy holidays. However you may enjoy the next couple weeks towards the end of the year, I hope it's a safe and healthy one. And so thank you for being here today. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.